I watched my sister's face turn pale, like all the blood suddenly left it. In that moment, I felt more satisfied than I ever had in my life. It was the most satisfying moment I could remember. Just a short time earlier, I had helped an old man on the bus. He was kind and polite. We talked the entire ride. When it was time for me to get off, he asked if he could walk with me to my sister's real estate office. He said he might be interested in buying some property. I had no idea who he really was. The moment Vanessa saw him standing in the lobby, she completely froze. The color drained from her face. Her hands began to shake. This sweet old man looked at my powerful, confident sister, the one who always seems in control, and calmly said, "Hello, Vanessa. I believe you told your sister that I was dead." Let me start from the beginning. My name is Leia Stoner. I'm 31 years old, and for the past 3 years, I've worked as the office manager at Stoner Real Estate in Scottsdale, Arizona. The title office manager sounds important, but the truth is, it just means I do all the work no one else wants to do. I answer phone calls. I organize files. I schedule appointments. When the cleaning lady is sick, I clean the bathroom myself. I make coffee, lots and lots of coffee. And I do all of this for $38,000 a year, which in Scottsdale barely covers the rent for my small studio apartment. My apartment is so tiny that I feel like I have to step outside just to think. But at least I can vacuum the entire place without unplugging the cord. I guess that's what you call efficiency. My sister Vanessa owns the company. She's 38, 7 years older than me, and she lives a completely different life. She drives a white Porsche Cayenne. She owns a house in Paradise Valley worth $2.3 million. She wears expensive designer dresses and gets her hair done every 2 weeks at a salon that charges more for one visit than I spend on groceries in a whole month. And me. I drive a 2009 Toyota that breaks down all the time. The mechanic knows me by name. Honestly, I think I'm paying for his kids to go to college. People often ask how two sisters can be so different. I used to ask myself the same question. Vanessa was always the smart one. The ambitious one. The one who seemed to have her whole life planned out. I was the younger sister who followed behind her, who needed help, who never quite got things right. At least, that's what I believed. For 12 years, that was the story I told myself. Our parents died in a car accident when I was 19. A drunk driver ran a red light and crashed into them while they were driving home from dinner. One phone call changed everything. My entire world fell apart in seconds. I was a college sophomore, barely an adult, and suddenly I was an orphan. Vanessa was 26 at the time. She moved in with me right away. She said she would take care of everything, the funeral plans, the lawyers, the estate, the insurance. And she did. She handled all of it. I was too broken to do anything except cry and try to remember how to breathe. A few weeks after the funeral, Vanessa sat me down to talk about money. She told me our parents had more debt than we ever knew. The house still had a large mortgage. There were credit cards, loans, and other bills they had kept hidden from us. After everything was settled, she said my share of the inheritance was $15,000. Just $15,000. That was all our parents' entire lives were worth. Half of almost nothing. I didn't question it. Why would I? She was my sister. She was the one who held me while I cried at the funeral. She made sure I ate. She made sure I slept. She made sure I didn't completely fall apart. She took control so I didn't have to. She also told me, very gently, that we had no family left. Our mother was an only child, and her parents had died when we were young. Our father had been estranged from his own father, a man named Theodore Brennan, for most of our lives. I was only 3 years old when they stopped speaking to each other. It had something to do with Grandpa not approving of our mother. It started as a stupid argument that was never fixed. Dad changed his last name to our mom's maiden name, Stoner, and completely cut ties with the Brennan family. Vanessa told me that Grandpa had died a few years before our parents' accident. A heart attack. Dad never got the chance to make peace with him. And that was it. No parents. No grandparents. No aunts or uncles. Just me and Vanessa, alone in the world. I believed every word she told me. I had no reason to doubt her. After the inheritance money ran out, which didn't take long, I dropped out of college and started working. Retail jobs. Waitressing. Temporary work. Anything I could find. For 9 years, I barely survived. I moved from a tiny apartment to an even tinier one. I lived on ramen noodles and cheap store-brand cereal. I watched my sister's life grow bigger, brighter, and more impressive, while mine stayed small and grey. Then, 3 years ago, Vanessa offered me a job. She said her company was growing and that she needed someone she could trust, someone to manage the office and handle daily tasks. She offered to pay me $38,000 a year. It wasn't much, but it was steady. I was thankful. Finally, my sister was helping me. Finally, I had something stable. I didn't realize she was keeping me close on purpose. I didn't understand that the job was just another way to control me, to keep me dependent, to make sure I never looked too closely at anything. I was the coffee woman. That became my identity. 3 years of making lattes, organizing files, and saying, "Yes, Vanessa," to everything. I even got promoted once, from coffee girl to coffee woman. Same coffee. Slightly better title. That Tuesday morning, my ancient. My Toyota decided to break down again. It was the 3rd time that month. The mechanic told me it would cost $900 to fix it. I checked my bank account. I had $340. So I took the bus to work, stressed, late, and completely unaware that the next 20 minutes would uncover 12 years of lies. I had no idea that helping an old man find his seat would change everything I thought I knew about my family. I had no idea that my sister had built her entire empire on theft, fraud, and betrayal. And I was about to watch it all fall apart. Before we continue, if you're enjoying the story, please hit the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. I read every comment, and I truly love hearing from you. Thank you so much for being here. Now, let's get back to the story. The 7:15 bus was packed that morning. I found a seat near the middle and tried not to think about how I was going to pay for the car repairs. Maybe I could ask Vanessa for an advance on my paycheck, again. She always made me feel guilty about it. She always reminded me how lucky I was to have this job. But in the end, she usually said yes. At the next stop, an elderly man stepped onto the bus. He was well dressed, wearing a nice blazer, neatly pressed pants, and polished shoes, but he was struggling to climb the steps. He held a cane in one hand and a leather bag in the other, and it was clearly too much for him. Suddenly, he dropped the cane. Without thinking, I jumped up. I grabbed his arm before he could fall and picked up the cane from the floor. He looked at me with bright blue eyes and smiled. "Well," he said, "that's the most excitement I've had all week. Thank you, young lady." I helped him sit down in my seat, the only empty one nearby, and told him it was no problem. I said I could stand for the rest of the ride. It was only about 15 more minutes. He smiled again and introduced himself as Ted. He said he was visiting the area and thinking about real estate options, maybe downsizing from where he currently lived. He asked what I did for work, and I told him I worked at a real estate office. I complained a little about my boss being demanding, nothing too detailed, just the kind of things you say to a stranger you expect to never see again. When I mentioned the company name, Stoner Real Estate, I noticed something change in his eyes for just a moment. It was quick, so I didn't think much about it. We talked for the rest of the ride. He asked about my life, my job, and my future plans. He wasn't being nosy, he just seemed genuinely interested. He even made me laugh, joking that bus drivers must go to a special school to learn how to hit every single pothole on the road. I remember thinking, this is what a grandfather should be like, kind, funny, and caring. I never had that. Or at least, that's what I believed at the time. When we reached my stop, Ted asked if he could walk with me. He said maybe he'd like to look at some listings and get a feel for the area. I said, sure, why not? He seemed harmless and sweet. We walked 2 blocks to the office, a sleek, modern building with large glass windows and the word Stoner Real Estate written in silver letters above the door. Vanessa's pride and joy. Inside, I offered Ted some coffee and asked him to wait in the reception area. Vanessa was in her back office, talking on the phone. I could hear her voice through the door, smooth, confident, and polished, the tone she always used with clients. A few minutes later, she finished the call and walked out. She was wearing a designer dress, her hair perfectly styled, and heels that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She had her professional smile ready, the one she saved for rich clients. Then she saw Ted. And she froze. I've known my sister my entire life. I've seen her handle angry clients, tough negotiations, and stressful situations. I had never, not once, seen her lose her composure. But in that moment, the color drained from her face. She reached out and grabbed the doorframe, like she might collapse. Her smile disappeared completely. Ted slowly stood up. He straightened his blazer, looked at her calmly, and said, "Hello, Vanessa. I believe you told your sister that I was dead." I laughed. It was such a strange thing to say that I thought I must have heard him wrong. "Vanessa, who is this man?" I asked. "What is he talking about?" Ted turned toward me. His eyes were gentle, but filled with sadness. "My name is Theodore Brennan," he said. "I'm your grandfather, Leia." The room spun. It felt like the ground had vanished beneath my feet. "That's impossible," I said. "Our grandfather died years ago, before our parents' accident. Vanessa told me." Ted looked back at my sister. "Is that what she told you?" he asked. "That's interesting, because she told me that you died in the same accident that killed your parents 12 years ago." I stared at Vanessa, waiting for her to explain. Waiting for her to laugh and say this was all a misunderstanding. She said nothing. Her face was perfectly calm, but I could see the thoughts racing behind her eyes. She was calculating, planning, figuring out how to control the situation. Ted continued, his voice steady and controlled. "For 12 years, I mourned you, Leia. I believed I lost my son and both of my granddaughters in one terrible night. I almost didn't survive that grief." He paused, then went on. 3 months ago, I saw your photograph on this company's website. The granddaughter I had been mourning was alive, working for her sister." My mind couldn't process his words. None of it made sense. "Vanessa," I whispered, my voice shaking. "What is he talking about?" My sister finally moved. She took a slow breath and put on her professional smile, that fake, polished smile, and said, "Grandpa Ted, you're confused. There's negotiations and stressful situations." I had never, not once, seen her lose her composure. But in that moment, the color drained from her face. She reached out and grabbed the doorframe, like she might collapse. Her smile disappeared completely. Ted slowly stood up. He straightened his blazer, looked at her calmly, and said, "Hello, Vanessa. I believe you told your sister that I was dead." I laughed. It was such a strange thing to say that I thought I must have heard him wrong. "Vanessa, who is this man?" I asked. "What is he talking about?" Ted turned toward me. His eyes were gentle, but filled with sadness. "My name is Theodore Brennan," he said. "I'm your grandfather, Leia." The room spun. It felt like the ground had vanished beneath my feet. "That's impossible," I said. "Our grandfather died years ago, before our parents' accident. Vanessa told me." Ted looked back at my sister. "Is that what she told you?" he asked. "That's interesting, because she told me that you died in the same accident that killed your parents 12 years ago." I stared at Vanessa, waiting for her to explain. Waiting for her to laugh and say this was all a misunderstanding. She said nothing. Her face was perfectly calm, but I could see the thoughts racing behind her eyes. She was calculating, planning, figuring out how to control the situation. Ted continued, his voice steady and controlled. "For 12 years, I mourned you, Leia. I believed I lost my son and both of my granddaughters in one terrible night. I almost didn't survive that grief." He paused, then went on. 3 months ago, I saw your photograph on this company's website. The granddaughter I had been mourning was alive, working for her sister. My mind couldn't process his words. None of it made sense. "Vanessa," I whispered, my voice shaking. "What is he talking about?" My sister finally moved. She took a slow breath and put on her professional smile, that fake, polished smile, and said, "Grandpa Ted, you're confused. There's been some kind of misunderstanding. Let me explain." "I'm not confused," Ted said. His voice wasn't angry. It was cold, calm, controlled. "I hired a private investigator, Vanessa. I know exactly what you've done, to me, to your sister, and to everyone who ever trusted you." He reached into his leather bag and pulled out a thick manila folder. "Should we talk about what's in here?" he asked. "Or would you prefer I go straight to the police?" My morning coffee was definitely not strong enough for this conversation. Vanessa's smile stayed in place, but her hands were shaking. For the first time in my life, I saw real fear in my sister's eyes. And I knew that whatever was inside that folder was about to change everything. Ted opened it right there in the reception area. There were documents, photographs, a thick printed report with a private investigator's logo on the front. Then Ted explained how he found me. 3 months earlier, he had been looking at real estate websites. He was thinking about selling his house in Sedona and moving somewhere smaller. When he saw the name Stoner Real Estate, it caught his attention. Stoner was his son's married name, the name my father took when he married our mother and cut ties with the Brennan family. Ted clicked on the About Us page. That's where he saw my photo. Leia Stoner, office manager. He said his heart nearly stopped. The granddaughter he had mourned for 12 years was alive. That same day, he hired a private investigator. What the investigator uncovered was worse than anything Ted had imagined. For 12 years, Vanessa had been lying, to both of us. She told Ted that I died in the accident. That I was sitting in the back seat and didn't survive. She told me that Ted died years before the accident. That he had a heart attack and that Dad never made peace with him. 2 perfectly planned lies. Lies designed to keep us separated forever. Apart forever. But that wasn't even the worst part. For 8 years, Vanessa had been visiting Ted regularly at his retirement community in Sedona. She played the role of the loving, devoted granddaughter who had survived the tragedy. She told him she worked in financial consulting. She never mentioned real estate. She never mentioned her company. And she never mentioned me. She kept her 2 lives completely separate, making sure this moment would never happen. Ted looked at me, sadness filling his eyes. "She told me you were dead, Leia, and I believed her. Why wouldn't I? She was my granddaughter. She visited me, brought me gifts, and called on holidays. I thought she was all I had left." I felt sick. "She's been setting herself up to inherit everything," Ted continued. "Over the past 8 years, she's received more than $200,000 in gifts from me. She convinced me to change my will twice. She's now the sole beneficiary. And she was pressuring me to sign over power of attorney next month." His voice stayed calm, but the pain underneath was obvious. This man had spent 12 years grieving, believing his entire family was gone, while the person he trusted most had been using him the whole time. Ted turned toward me. "Leia, I need to ask you something. What did you receive from your parents' estate?" The question shocked me. $15,000, I said. "Vanessa told me there was a lot of debt, credit cards, the mortgage, things our parents had hidden. She said that was my share." Ted closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, his expression was hard, maybe anger, maybe disgust. "Your father had a life insurance policy worth $850,000, he said slowly. "Your parents' house sold for $420,000. And their investments were worth more than $340,000. He let the numbers sink in. The estate was worth more than $1.6 million. "Leia, your share should have been over $800,000. I couldn't breathe. $800,000. I was supposed to have $800,000, and instead I got $15,000. I spent the last 12 years barely surviving, working low-paying jobs, living in tiny apartments, eating cheap food, and driving a car that broke down every month. I was grateful when my sister finally helped me by giving me a job that paid me less than half of what I was worth. I looked at Vanessa. She was still standing there, frozen. The mask she wore was cracking more and more with every word Ted spoke. "You stole from me," I whispered. "I was 19 years old. Our parents had just died. I trusted you with everything, and you stole $800,000 from me." Vanessa opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. That night, I went back to my tiny apartment and did something I should have done 12 years ago. I pulled out a box from the back of my closet. It held my parents' personal papers. Vanessa had given it to me after the funeral. She said it was just sentimental things, nothing important. I had never gone through it carefully. It hurt too much. At the bottom of the box, beneath old photos and birthday cards, I found an envelope. On the front, it said, "To our beloved daughters, Vanessa and Leia." I suddenly remembered the letter. Vanessa had shown it to me right after the funeral, while I was crying so hard I could barely see. She read parts of it out loud and said it proved our parents wanted everything split evenly, and that's exactly what she was doing. I never actually read the letter myself. I was 19 and broken by grief. I trusted my sister. Now, 12 years later, I sat on my apartment floor and read every single word. Our father had written it before leaving on a business trip, the trip where the accident happened. It was meant to be opened if anything ever happened to them. The letter listed everything. Life insurance, $850,000 house value, $420,000 investments, $340,000. The final line was clear, to be split equally between our beloved daughters, Vanessa and Leia. "We love you both more than words can say." Split equally. My share should have been over $800,000. I could have finished college. I could have bought a house. I could have built a real life. Instead, I got $15,000 and a decade of struggle, while my sister built an empire using money she stole from me. I sat on my apartment floor until 2 in the morning, surrounded by documents I had never taken the time to read. I stared at numbers that should have been mine. The math was simple. That missing money could have bought about 47,000 lattes, or, an actual life. Ted had been right about something else. He said he had resources, a strong lawyer, and that he wanted to help me get justice. For the first time in 12 years, someone was on my side, someone who could truly fight back. I picked up my phone and called him. "I found the letter," I said. "I'm ready." Ted's lawyer was a woman named Patricia Holloway. She was in her mid-50s, with silver hair, sharp eyes, and absolutely no patience for fraud. She had spent 30 years handling estate cases in Arizona and had seen every trick in the book. When she reviewed my documents, she didn't soften her words. "Your sister is something else," she said, flipping through the pages. "I've seen siblings fight over a couch in probate court. But this level of fraud, this is impressively bad." Patricia requested the official estate records from Maricopa County. What came back was worse than any of us expected. 12 years ago, when I was 20 years old and barely able to function because of grief, Vanessa filed a petition with the court. She claimed I was mentally incapacitated due to severe grief and trauma. She told the judge that I wasn't able to make decisions for myself. She submitted documents with my signature on them, giving her full control over our parents' estate. I never signed those documents. I never even saw them. Vanessa forged my signature. She lied to a court. She stole everything and left me with scraps. Patricia tracked the money, every single dollar. The life insurance payout of $850,000 went straight into an account Vanessa controlled. She used part of it to pay our parents' real debts, which were actually very small. A modest mortgage, a few credit cards, about $80,000 total. She kept the rest. The sale of the house brought in $420,000. Our parents' investments added another $340,000. After paying the small amount of real debt, Vanessa walked away with around $1.5 million. She gave me $15,000 and told me that was my share. With the money she stole from me, she started Stoner Real Estate. The startup costs, the first office lease, the marketing, the fancy website, all of it was paid for with my inheritance. Every commission she earned. Every property she sold. Every dollar of profit. It all grew from stolen money. The white Porsche Cayenne. Bought with money that should have been mine. The $2.3 million house in Paradise Valley. Same thing. The designer clothes, the expensive hair appointments, the luxury vacations she posted on social media, all of it was built on fraud. And while she was living that life, I was working double shifts at a diner. Counting pennies. Wondering why I could never get ahead, no matter how hard I worked. Then she offered me a job. Her generous big sister act. $38,000 a year. To work 60 hours a week, bringing her coffee and organizing her files. She kept me close. She kept me poor. She kept me grateful. Patricia also looked into what Vanessa had been doing to Ted. What she discovered added another serious crime. Over 8 years, Vanessa had taken more than $200,000 from our grandfather as gifts. She convinced him to change his will twice, making herself the only beneficiary of his $4 million estate. She was just weeks away from getting him to sign over power of attorney, which would have given her total control over his finances. This wasn't just theft from me. This was elder financial abuse, a serious felony in Arizona. If this story has you on the edge of your seat, please take 1 second to hit the like button. It really helps more people find these stories, and it means the world to me. Thank you. Now, let's get back to it. Patricia explained our options. We could file a civil lawsuit and try to recover the money through the courts. But that would take years, cost a fortune in legal fees, and still might not work. Or we could go to the police. Present the evidence. Let the criminal justice system handle it. If we do this the right way, Patricia said, she won't just lose the money. She'll lose everything. Ted and I agreed. We didn't just want compensation, we wanted justice. But Patricia warned us to be careful. We had to be strategic. Every piece of evidence needed. Of course, I said yes to every one of Vanessa's demands. Every interaction felt like swallowing broken glass. But I did it. I played the part of the grateful little sister, the loyal employee, the woman who had no idea she'd been robbed. At night, I met with Ted and Patricia. We went through documents. We tracked bank transfers. We built the case piece by piece. I learned things about my sister that shocked me. She had a business partner named Russell Kerr, a wealthy investor who provided the startup money when she launched the company. He was a silent partner. He invested money but let Vanessa handle everything. He trusted her completely and never checked the books. I wondered what he would think when the truth came out. Probably nothing good. I also learned how careful Vanessa had been about keeping her two lives separate. She never mentioned Stoner Real Estate to Ted. She never talked about her business, her office, or her employees. She told him she worked in financial consulting and kept everything vague. That's why Ted never searched for her company online. That's why he never came across my photo, until that random day 3 months ago. Vanessa had built a wall around her lies. She thought it would protect her forever. It didn't. On the final day of our 3-week preparation, Patricia called me with news. "We're ready," she said. "I'm filing the criminal complaint tomorrow morning. By tomorrow afternoon, your sister's life is going to change completely." That night, I lay awake in my tiny apartment, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow, everything would be different. Tomorrow, the sister who stole 12 years of my life would finally face the consequences. I thought about all the coffee I had made for her. Hundreds of cups over 3 years. Thousands of yes, Vanessa. A lifetime of being the lesser sister. The struggling one. The one who was supposed to be grateful for whatever scraps she was given. I smiled in the dark. At least I never made her coffee very well. Lots of accidental decaf. Lots of slightly burned pots. It was petty, but it was something. Tomorrow, I would have something much better than bad coffee. Tomorrow, I would have justice. The detectives arrived at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I remember the exact time because I kept staring at the clock, waiting. My heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone in the office could hear it. Two men in suits walked through the front door of Stoner Real Estate. They didn't look like clients. They looked exactly like what they were. "We're looking for Vanessa Stoner," one of them said, showing his badge. I pointed toward the back office, trying to keep my hand steady. "She's in there." Vanessa stepped out a moment later, her professional smile already in place. She was wearing a cream-colored designer dress and heels that probably cost more than my car repairs. She looked perfect, as always. "Good afternoon, officers," she said. "How can I help you?" "Vanessa Stoner," the detective said, "you are under arrest. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Her smile disappeared. The detective continued reading her rights while his partner pulled out handcuffs. I watched as they snapped around my sister's wrists, the same wrists that wore diamond bracelets and expensive watches. The same hands that signed forged documents using my name. The charges include forgery, fraud, theft by deception, and elder financial exploitation, the detective said. "You'll be transported to the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office for processing." Vanessa's head snapped toward me. Her eyes were wild, furious and desperate. "You did this," she hissed. "After everything I did for you," she shouted. "I gave you a job. I took care of you. I was there for you when Mom and Dad died, and this is how you repay me." I didn't respond. I just watched. "You'd be nothing without me," she screamed as they led her toward the door. "Do you hear me? Nothing." Then the door closed behind her. The office fell silent. Two other agents who worked there, people who had witnessed everything, stared at me with wide eyes. I sat down at my desk, took a deep breath, and felt something I hadn't felt in 12 years. Peace. But the story didn't end with that arrest. That was only the beginning. News spreads fast in Scottsdale's real estate world. By the next morning, everyone knew. Vanessa Stoner, rising star of luxury real estate, arrested for fraud. The phone started ringing non-stop, but not with new clients. These were existing clients, panicked and demanding to know if their money was safe. Russell Kerr, Vanessa's silent partner, was completely blindsided. 10 years earlier, he had invested $200,000 in the company and trusted Vanessa to handle everything. He never checked the books. He never questioned her. He never suspected a thing. Now his investment was at risk, and he needed answers. Russell hired a forensic accountant to examine the company's finances. What the accountant discovered made the situation far worse. Vanessa hadn't only been stealing from me and Ted. She had been stealing from the company too, for years. There were fake expense reports totaling $180,000. Payments sent to shell companies that didn't actually exist. Client escrow funds that had gone missing and were never properly explained. Russell was furious, not just because of the money, but because if the authorities connected him to the fraud, he could go down too. After all, he was a partner. His name was on the paperwork. Russell's lawyer gave him two choices. Option 1, stay quiet, hope for the best, and possibly be charged as an accomplice. Option 2, fully cooperate with authorities, hand over everything, and hope for immunity. Russell chose survival. He gave the FBI every bank record, every suspicious transaction, and every questionable contract. He told them everything he knew, which wasn't much, but it was enough to trigger a federal investigation. The charges expanded quickly: wire fraud, money laundering, and tax evasion. The case exploded. FBI forensic accountants reviewed 10 years of Vanessa's business records. What they uncovered was shocking. Vanessa had defrauded at least 11 other victims during her career. Elderly clients who trusted her to handle their home sales and never received all the money they were owed. First-time homebuyers who lost deposits on deals that fell apart for suspicious reasons. People who believed they were working with a professional and never realized they were being robbed. Each new victim brought more charges. Each new charge added more years to her possible prison sentence. Meanwhile, Vanessa sat in a jail cell, watching her empire fall apart. Her assets were frozen while the investigation continued. The $2.3 million house was seized. The white Porsche Cayenne was seized. Her bank accounts filled with stolen money were frozen. Her real estate license was suspended immediately. Her reputation, the thing she valued most, was destroyed overnight. Former clients publicly distanced themselves from her. Business contacts pretended they had never met her. Friends stopped returning her calls. One day, I drove past her house. Just to look at it. A federal seizure notice was taped to the front door. The Porsche was being loaded onto a tow truck. I watched it drive away and thought, guess she should have been nicer to the coffee woman. The federal trial lasted 3 weeks. I sat in that courtroom every single day, watching my sister try to charm the jury the same way she had charmed people her entire life. This time, it didn't work. There was no one left to fool. The evidence was overwhelming. The documents were clear. 11 victims testified about the money they had lost. Ted testified about 8 years of manipulation. And I testified about being a grieving 19-year-old who trusted her sister to handle everything, never knowing she was stealing my entire future. When the jury foreman stood up to read the verdict, I watched Vanessa's face. For the first time in her life, she looked scared. Guilty. 23 counts. Federal wire fraud. Money laundering. Tax evasion. State charges for forgery, theft, and elder financial exploitation. The judge looked at my sister with no sympathy in his eyes. "Miss Stoner," he said, "you systematically betrayed every person who ever trusted you. You stole from grieving family members. You manipulated an elderly man who believed you were his only family. You defrauded clients who placed their life savings in your hands. You represent the worst kind of predator, one who hides behind family and professionalism while destroying lives." He sentenced her to 27 years in federal prison. Vanessa is 38 years old. She'll be 65 before she's eligible for parole, the same age our father was when he died. Somehow, that felt right. The court ordered full restitution to all victims. Every asset Vanessa had accumulated, the house, the cars, the jewelry, the investment accounts, was sold and distributed. I received my rightful inheritance, the money I should have received 12 years ago, plus interest. In total, about $940,000. Not a fortune by Scottsdale standards, but enough to change my life. Ted got his $200,000 back. His will was thrown out and restored so he can decide what to do with it now. He told me he's rewriting it again, but won't tell me what's in it. He says talking about those things brings bad luck. The 11 other victims, elderly clients, young families, people who trusted the wrong person, got their money back too. For some of them, it was life-changing. A retired teacher recovered the $40,000 she lost in a home sale gone wrong. A young couple got back the deposit for a house they never got to buy. Justice isn't always about revenge. Sometimes, it's about making things right. After the trial, I quit my job. I paid off every debt I'd built up over 12 years of barely surviving. Then I went back to school, night classes, a business degree, on my terms and my schedule. I started a small property management company. Ethical. Transparent. Everything my sister's business wasn't. I named it Brennan Properties, after the grandfather I almost never knew I had. It's not a big company, just me and 2 employees, managing a handful of rental properties around Scottsdale. But it's mine. Built with my own money. My own work. My own name. And yes, I finally retired the 2009 Toyota that had been breaking down for years. I didn't buy a Porsche. I bought a Subaru Outback. Reliable. Practical. Real. Every time I turn the key and the engine starts on the first try, I smile. Ted and I built a real relationship. Sunday dinners at his place in Sedona. Phone calls twice a week. He's 79 now, and he knows time is precious. And so do I. I don't wake up angry anymore. I don't replay the past in my head. I don't feel small. My sister took 12 years from me, but she didn't get the rest. I have my life back. Precious. He doesn't try to replace the years we lost. We can't get those back. But we can use the time we still have, and that's what we're doing. One Sunday evening, we were sitting on his porch, watching the sunset turn the red rocks orange and gold. He looked at me and said quietly, "Your father would be so proud of you." "I know I am." I cried. It was the first time anyone had said that to me in 12 years. 6 months after the sentencing, I received a letter from a federal prison in Phoenix. Vanessa's handwriting was on the envelope. I opened it, even though I knew I probably shouldn't have. She asked for money, for commissary, phone calls, legal fees to file another appeal. She said she was sorry. She said she made mistakes. She said I was the only family she had left. I read the letter once. Then I threw it in the trash. Some doors, once closed, stay closed. A year after the trial, I was sitting in my new office, small, simple, completely mine, when my assistant buzzed the intercom. "There's a call from a correctional facility," she said. "Will you accept the charges?" I thought about it for exactly 2 seconds. "No," I said. "I won't." I hung up and went back to work, building something real, something honest, something that finally belongs to me. Some people build their entire lives on lies. Here's what I learned: lies have an expiration date. The truth always finds a way out, even if it takes 12 years. And sometimes it arrives disguised as a stranger on a city bus who just needs help finding a seat. Be kind anyway. You never know who's watching, or who's been waiting 12 years to finally be found. Thank you so much for watching.